Welcome, everyone. My name is Kathy Caroline, and I am regional captain for this area, and I'm also district captain for Minnesota 20B. And so we're grateful that you're all here tonight. We're going to have a lot of information for you, and we'll have a separate question and answer period after the presentation is done. So for now, I will start with a prayer. So if everyone could bow their heads. And we say, Heavenly Father, bless our veterans for their selfless service to our country. We are forever grateful for them and pray your blessings of healing of mind, body, and spirit, and pray they find peace and comfort. We thank you for bringing us together to learn and discuss ways that we can help save our country. Please give us courage to stand up for principles and values and always speak the truth. Help us, Lord, to always treat each other with respect and kindness as we follow your will. Help us to reflect your light in all the darkness around us. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And this being Veterans Day, how many are veterans in the room? Can we have a show of hands? Stand up. Wonderful. Thank you all. And so now I'm going to have us stand and say the pledge. And I'm going to have Paul, who's a member of our team, start us with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, we have some legislators here. Representative Dwayne Qualm just walked in, and Representative Cal Barr is here. We're grateful for them, and we will have them, when we have our question and answer period, we'll have them join in, because they're both great ambassadors for Convention of States. So I will turn it over to our presenter now. Kevin Furman does a fabulous job of this. And so we'll all learn a little bit more about what Convention of States is and why we really, really need this to save our country. So there's Kevin.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thanks for coming tonight. And again, thanks, veterans, for all you've done for us. I am from the Twin Cities. I'm actually a district captain for Convention of States up in 36B, and self-employed, kind of business owner guy. The reason I'm talking to you is that I finally got to that point where I couldn't say I can't do anything anymore, I have to do something. And so a few years ago, I was searching online what is out there, and came across the idea of Convention of States. And said, okay, this sounds interesting. I don't remember this. Let me figure it out. So I did some research, just started to dig in. Let's figure out what's going on here. Is this something, or is it just fluff? What, like a lot of people just do a lot of talking. Does it have teeth to it? And so I guess it's pretty obvious. I think it has teeth. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing in front of a bunch of people I don't know talking about it. So here we are. So that's really it. It's not really that I'm some big expert. I don't pretend to be. I have done some research and kind of dug in, so I do have some facts about what's going on, how it works, what's going on with the Convention of States, where it comes from, etc. That's what I'm going to talk to you about, is just do a little bit of, well, what is it? How does it work? What's going on? So we'll do that for a little while, and then, as Kathy said, we're going to have the representatives come up. They'll get to say a few things, why they're, what they think about it, if the support they feel for it, and then we can do some question and answering afterwards. So, with that, all right. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I do want to address why we're doing this. Like, what is the point? How come people are concerned? And so there are three big areas that we want to address with this whole idea. They happen to be, well, as you can, if you can see the screen, great. If not, I'll say some of it. I won't read the screen to you, but I'll reference it quite a bit. So debt and spending, federal overreach, and then the idea of career politicians. So I just want to go quickly through kind of each one just to give a snapshot. We could certainly spend a few hours of the problems we all see with the government at this point. I know I could. I'm sure you don't want to hear all my grievances, but it seems to be many people are having an issue with what's going on with the federal government. And I certainly am one, and I think what we're doing here can do something about it. So let's take a little snapshot of what's going on. So with debt and spending, the big thing about that is I've been hearing about, we need to fix this, we've got to do that, and it just keeps getting bigger my entire life. So there's been a lot of talk by politicians, but really, no matter who's in office, it keeps growing. That's kind of the bottom line, which tells me, yeah, it's not necessarily one party's fault. And you could blame it on one more than the other if you want, that's great, but really it's a federal problem. It's the system of the federal government just spending way too much money and taking ours and more of it. And we're kind of at a point now where they're going to start asking for even more. And we're going to hit a tipping point sometime within my lifetime for sure. So we got to be very careful. And be very careful about it in the sense of we need to do something that puts more teeth into what they can and can't do with our money. Here's kind of a graph, just really quickly. So as I was saying, you can kind of see how it grows no matter who's in office. And so I'm not here to say it's somebody's fault, as in right or left. I actually I'm going to say this now, I'll probably reference this a couple times. I see it more of as an up and down problem, not a right and left problem. This is federal versus state. That's really what's going on here, and that's what we really are trying to address. I would say, right-leaning people tend to want less government, so it tends to kind of lend itself to that thinking. But it affects everybody. When the federal government overreaches, that's not just one side, that's everybody. So, just a thought about that. Okay, so federal overreach, the thing about this is there's a ton of people in our government that are not elected. There's not really a lot of accountability. And so we have departments. We have people that have been there for a very long time. And lately, Fauci would be a good example, right? He wasn't elected. He's the highest paid federal official we have. And yet, no accountability. He's just there. So that's kind of a problem in my mind, just that in of itself. So one thing we want to address is that. What do we do about that, right? Is there something we can do about it? The other one is all the laws and regulations. So I'm going to see if this, so this is a list of what has been passed by Congress. This is all the rules and regulations that have been put in place by unelected officials. So it's a really good graphic way to see the problem of how much we are kind of being regulated by people who we didn't elect. That's not really the Founding Fathers' thought. That's not the point. The point is we should have representation in what happens to what's going on in our government. So that's that. Yay. All right, you're not going to be able to hear that one the way the system works up. So there's a little video there. It just talks about how following the Constitution, some people talk about, they don't really follow the Constitution. Why are you talking about a constitutional thing? Which we are, and I'll get to that in a little bit. If they're not going to follow it, then why bother, right? And the thing is, really the main point to remember is they actually are following the annotated Constitution. Originally, it was written on 4 pieces of paper. Now it's over 3,000 pages that are printed each year. And that's through all the Supreme Court decisions that have sort of ruled upon things in the Constitution. So they're following that annotated one, and they're looking to expand it. They just know it's going to keep going unless we do something. So part of the problem is we're just letting them just keep doing that. We're not putting enough stringent ties upon what they can and can't do. So that's part of it. The thing about career politicians is it really, again, doesn't matter who's there. There's, on both sides, people that have been there for decades. And if you read any of the Founding Fathers' documents, they found career politician to be unheard of. Like, it was unthinkable that someone would want to do politics. They thought, and it's okay, I have to do it, fine, I'll go do my time. Then I go back and get to my life, right? That's how they viewed it, and that's been lost, obviously, right? So here's another little quick graph. This is the length of time people have spent in office. So again, it just keeps creeping up and up and up. So those are the three areas. That's what we want to talk about. Why we think it's a big deal. So the solution to all that is we can either say, well, I can't do anything like I did. I'm just one person. I can't do anything, and just let it go. That's obviously not working. So the solution that we are looking at is something that's actually in the Constitution. So the Founding Fathers, so again, you're not going to be able to hear this. Hang on a second. Get this off. Okay, so I'll just kind of walk through this. So at the last couple days of the convention in 1787, Colonel Mason stood up and said, hey, wait a minute. We don't have a provision in here for the states to amend the Constitution. We've left it all up to Congress. And there's going to become a day when the federal government gets to be tyrannical, and they're not going to reign in their own power. That's just the way human beings are. They understood human nature. And they said, Colonel Mason said, wait a minute, we've got to give a way for the states to have some say in this. And so in Article 5 of the Constitution, there was a clause in there for Congress to amend the Constitution, but nothing for the states. And so he said, hey, I propose that we let the states have that power also. We have a mechanism for the states to call for a convention to propose amendments also. And after a long, hot summer, once he brought that up, it was a unanimous yes vote, which I'm pretty sure that was the only one of the whole process. It was a pretty ugly process. So everybody realized, well, you're right, we did. We didn't put a mechanism here for the states. So very, very poignant in that somebody had the foresight, luckily, and everybody went, oh my, you're right, and put it in. So luckily it's there. So that's a little video in tribute to Colonel George Mason. Probably a lot of, I'm sure people now that aren't learning about the Constitution have never heard of that. And I don't remember that story when I was even in school. And I work with high school kids a lot. And so I know they're not being taught much about the Constitution. I ask them often, and they get a kind of a cursory glance and don't really dig in. So anybody that knows anything about the Constitution probably has done a lot of research on their own, which is good. We should, and we should have a lot more people understand what's going on. Speaking of that, let's go into it. So Article 5 of our Constitution is this, and I do want to read this one. So this is one I do want to read because I like hearing it, and I think it's good for everybody to hear it. Also, we're doing a Facebook Live. Hello, Facebook. And I want them to hear it since they can't necessarily read a small screen. So here's the part of Article 5 that's pertinent to what we're going to talk about. So the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, shall be valid in all intents and purposes part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. And it finishes there. That's the part I want to bring up that they added in that the states can call a convention to propose amendments to this Constitution. And I say it that way, I'll bring it up a little bit later. There's a reason why I'm kind of emphasizing this Constitution part, but I'll get to that in a minute. I do just kind of want to talk about well, how does that work, right? So what's going on? So what we do is we're going to use the Constitution to propose amendments to rein in the power of the federal government. That's what it's there for. That's what the Founding Fathers meant it to be. That's the mechanism they gave us. It's fully legal, constitutional. We're not trying to do anything radical. We're just trying to rein in a tyrannical government as far as I'm concerned at this point. So here's how it works. So you're thinking, okay, that sounds great, but how do you do it? So through grassroots efforts, we go to our representatives and say, you need to call for a convention of states. We want you to be one of the states that says, we're going to do this and get together and talk about this. So we have to go to our legislators, and they either pass or not pass, hopefully pass, in both the House and the Senate of each state to get a call for the convention. So they pass these resolutions. If we get enough, which is 2/3 of the states, that's 34, need to pass this so that the convention will be called. So that's the first big hurdle. That's the big one in that it's actually not been done before. So I'll bring that up now. We haven't been able to make that happen because the bar is so high. It's very difficult to make this go. To get 34 states to agree on anything at this point sometimes seems almost impossible. But if we really look at federal overreach, again, that doesn't affect just one side or the other. That's American people. And it is we the people, by the way, in case you forgot. So once we get those 34 states, Congress is then, by law, forced, if you will, to have the call for the convention. So they can pick the date and the time, or the place and the time, but they cannot not do it. By law, they have to. So that's their only role in this whole process. Once that happens, it's all up to the states. Governors have no say. Congress has no say. President has no say. It's all up to the states at that point. So then they all meet. So we get to meet and debate, propose amendments, discuss, et cetera, et cetera. And if we get to a point where we say, okay, here's an amendment we'd like to send back to the states, then there's a vote. Each state gets one vote. They can send as many delegates as they want to this convention, but each state only gets one vote when it comes down to this part. And so if by simple majority, so if 26 states say, yep, that's a great amendment, we want to send that back to everybody to get it ratified, then it passes as a proposed amendment. If it doesn't, then it goes nowhere, and it's done. So if it does make that point, it does go back to the states. 3/4 of the states, as it said in Article 5, have to ratify it. And that's how our amendments have done so far. All the amendments we have been ratified in that way. They've just been all proposed by Congress as opposed by the states. So 38 states have to say yes. Then it becomes an amendment and part of the Constitution at that point. So again, 38 states is a very high bar. It means that one of the two chambers in one of those 13 states could say no, and then we're done. So it's very difficult, but that was in purpose. The Founding Fathers knew they didn't want it to be changed every weekend. They had enough foresight to understand this is a somber thing, this is a very sacred thing. Let's not make it so easy that, a weekend deal. But once it is there, it is part of the Constitution. That is the deal. So now I want to get to a little bit more detail on it. So one part that's difficult in history is that you have to have the same resolution in all the states. So it has to be the same wording or very, very similar for it to be valid. So because it gets sent to Congress saying, hey, all the states want a convention, and then they look at it and they go, yep, they're all the same. Okay, here's your convention. Or if it's not, that's a case where they can say, no, you guys don't agree on what you're going to talk about, you can't have a convention. There is that, but once the convention is called, they're out of it. Anyway, I do want to say, here's the wording of how we're going to do this. So the legislature of the state of Minnesota, et cetera, whoever, hereby applies to Congress under the provisions of Article 5 that the Constitution of the United States for the calling of a convention of the states limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. So what that does is it sets up those three areas as valid areas for us to discuss at the convention. Anything that would come outside of that would be immediately deemed as out of order and not discussed. So everything that we want to do at the convention has to fall into one of those three areas. So that's one thing about it, and that's the reason we have those three areas. It gives us a wide enough berth to address the big issues, but not so big that anything could happen, which anything can't really happen. It has to fall under what's in here. But if we just did say one of those things, it may not address all the issues that are really affecting us. So we take those three stances so that we can actually address all three and propose amendments in those areas. So far, we've got 15 states that have passed. There's legislation in many, so we've got things happening. So we're not quite halfway as far as passing the resolution, but that's actually not bad. That's actually some good ground. We've got good things happening. There's a couple that are right on the fringe. Here in Minnesota, we've got resolutions introduced in both the House and the Senate, and we can talk about that later. You can ask our representatives more about details. Since they're here, they can answer it better than I can. So I'll let them do that. So that's the process. That's what's going on. That's what we're talking about doing. So it's we as a grassroots demand it from our legislators to pass that resolution. Once that happens, we can get both House and Senate to pass the resolutions. We call for the convention. If we can get 34 states to do that, we actually hold the convention, and then we can start to talk about proposed amendments, et cetera, et cetera. So I do want to bring this up because when you start talking about this with people, they'll start hearing some information. One of the biggest thing that comes up is a runaway convention. You'll hear, if you've heard about this conversation before, that may have come up. It comes up rather quickly in most public arenas. And the problem is they're actually referencing what they heard about the 1787 original convention when they actually wrote the Constitution. There have been scholars that have tried to say that they didn't follow their command from their states, and it was a runaway convention, and they just ignored it, and they wrote where they wanted. It's actually not true. If you go back and do your research and actually read what happened, almost all the states said, in a nutshell, do what you got to do to fix the Federals of Confederation because it's a mess. That's basically what happened. And so they said, okay, let's do that. There's one state that didn't jump in on that because they didn't have that in their demand, so to speak, from the states. So they didn't at first didn't participate in that. But that's where it kind of stems from. And unfortunately, not enough people have been educated in that or know that, so they just hear a scholar say, oh, well, it was a runaway convention, so if we have a convention of states, it'll just do the same thing. So they could rewrite the Constitution. It's actually not true. From what I was reading, if you read Article 5, it says you can only propose amendments to this Constitution. It doesn't say anything about rewriting the Constitution. So they can't banish the Second Amendment. They can't do stuff like that. That's not how it works. If you try to do something like that as we're going to repeal the Second Amendment, that's not going to... Check, 1, 2. Okay, it's back. Bummer. All right, so things like that are not going to pass 3/4 of the states. That's not going to happen. So, nor would it even be inside of what we're trying to do. So, the whole idea of it being a runaway convention or a constitutional convention is just misinformation from the 70s that has been now carried and just keeps getting regurgitated over and over and over. So, if somebody brings that up, I would just say, you know what? Sounds like you need to really do some research. You've been hearing people talk about it, and they don't know what they're saying. Another way to think about it is if you think the Founding Fathers were smart in writing the Constitution, and somehow they just fell asleep in Article 5, that doesn't really work, right? So these guys are very serious. They took a lot of time to make sure that everything in there was going to set up our system to help us govern ourselves. So there's that one. Another one that comes up is we don't know how that the convention would operate. And the thing about this is there's legal precedent in how these things happen. Before the Constitution was written, the states actually had kind of conventions amongst themselves to figure out trade deals and what they wanted to do and et cetera. So there's legal precedent on how they operate. And so to say that we just have no idea what's going to happen, again, is a very ignorant stance on history or a very selective view on what one thing might have been said out of context. So be careful about people that say something like that. Again, they're not really looking at historical precedent or legal precedent. And there's some great legal scholars we have on our board of endorsers that you can do some research with. We'll talk about those maybe in a couple minutes. So that's that one. Let's see. The topic of the Article 5 Convention cannot be limited. I already talked about that. It has to be under what you call for the resolution. You cannot do anything outside of that. It is out of order, not valid, can't happen. So again, this is... it just does. I don't know where this comes from, but it's talked about a lot. I've noticed it online, and it's silly. It's just outright silly. 'Cause, again, it's a convention. It's not a resolution. It's a convention. So, Congress would control an Article 5 convention. Again, there's been, this comes from a couple of lawyers that wrote this paper about this back in the 70s. And there's been cases that actually been about Article 5, and they said, no, that's not how it works. So again, legal precedent. Just, again, people should do their homework. And then the last one, just that people talk about having no safeguards. So people from outside could somehow buy it off or something. That one is interesting in that, well, I would say that's kind of happening now already in our system now. But as far as a convention's concerned, again, you have to have everybody agree. And to buy everyone off would be just near impossibility. So to say that there's no safeguards, getting 2/3 of the states to agree on actually having it has never been done in 250 some years. So that's a pretty high safeguard. Then you got to have people agree on in the convention, at least a majority there. Then you got to get 3/4 of the states to actually ratify it. The bar is extremely high. So to say there are no safeguards, again, doesn't really understand the process. So I just want to go over those just to make sure. If you come across those, there's ways you can point to them and say, no, that's actually not true. One of the best resources that helped me understand this was Dr. Robert Nadelson, who's on our board of lawyers, and he wrote a great book about the legality of Article 5. He dug into it. He was a guy who was totally against it because he heard the same talking points, and then he said, well, I better figure this out. Let's see what's really there, and so I can prove that these guys are wrong talking about it. And he started to dig into the history, did a lot of research, and realized, oh, no, they're actually right. This is a great thing. So he's all on board, and if you want to get your legal mind sort of blown apart, so to speak, you can read his book. It's pretty dry, but it's very, very, very informative. Let's put it that way. So we're just trying to build our grassroots. What we're doing tonight is that. Talking to everybody, letting people know what's going on, why we're doing it, how it works, so you can be educated to talk to your friends, and then they can start to do their research and sign the petition, etc. So right now we've got 5 million people that have signed on, saying, great. I know we've got over 35,000 here in Minnesota. I don't remember the exact number, I apologize. But it's definitely over that at this point, which is awesome. So we're doing these kinds of events to get the word out in all over the state so that more people can understand what it really is. As far as progress, I kind of showed that map, right? Here's another thing we did that was interesting. We did some surveys with states that hadn't passed a resolution yet, just to see where they're at, just to explain, here's what we're trying to do. Do you agree with that or not? And what they found is, even amongst Democrats and independents, it was a majority that said yes. So we actually have, again, it's really not right or left. Yes, more Republicans tend to support it. Again, I think they're more small government-minded people, so they kind of get it quicker. But when you really explain what's going on federal versus state, that federal's overstepping their bounds with our state, and with our representatives here, their kind of hands get tied pretty fast with the federal government doing that. So it doesn't matter the party. It just, and even in Minnesota here, we had the highest percentage of 76%. So there's a lot of support here. So it's really not, again, right or left. I think it's kind of up or down. If we can kind of focus on that, that'll get us more support, and we can move along even faster. That's what I say. And then some of the people that are high profile that do endorse us, Mark Levin, I think he might have been the guy that I heard first say Convention of States, where I kind of first heard the phrase and the term and needed to look into it. He's a big proponent. Dr. James Dobson, I'm just going to run through these kind of quickly. Late Tom Coburn, big supporter. And then there's a whole bunch of other endorsements. There's also a list of our legal board, if you will, some very heavy hitters who have, many of which have done cases at the Supreme Court, so that, definitely know what they're talking about in the legal field. I am not a lawyer, so I can't speak to all that side. I just know their credentials and their history tells me a lot that they know what they're doing. So certainly trust that. But if you want to find out more about it, please go to conventionofstates.com/endorsements. You can read all about it. All right, so at this point, and we're almost done, right? First thing is, if that sounds good, sign the petition. So we'll certainly hand those out, and you can sign a petition if you haven't already. And we'll get to that very soon. So that's your first step. With that information, that can get sent to your representative, and they can know more people in your district are on board, and then they have a lot more teeth in their arguments about why this is important when they go talk to their colleagues in the House or the Senate. The next thing is, if you want to donate, we do have, I saw lots of donations for our basket back there. That helps us with with the literature that we hand out, which is awesome. If you wanted to donate to the National, it's a different thing. You could go online and donate there if you'd like, just so that we can keep things like this going on, especially the website and everything they put together does cost money, so if you'd like to do that. But the big thing is, sign the petition, go ahead and contact your legislators, write them a note, even if it's a postcard or a small letter. It's those kinds of things are very impactful to them because not many people do it anymore. So writing something is really, really impactful. And then if you feel so inclined, you can volunteer. You could do, help out at an event like this, or maybe be a district captain, or whatever might make sense for you in your situation. So that is the deal with what we're doing, how it works, and how to be involved. At this point, Kathy, why don't you come back up and fill in some gaps for me?
Along. Dr. Colburn wrote Smashing the DC Monopoly. It's an excellent book. He was really into the overreach of government, the overspending for just ridiculous things that they find a way to spend money on. And so he wrote his book. Mark Levin's Liberty Amendments. He wrote this book in 2013. And I saw him on the Glenn Beck show. And that's when I first got interested in Convention of States. And he goes through the amendments he would like to see discussed at a convention and the ones he would hope would come out of it. So this is a very informative book. And then Kevin was talking about the law of Article 5. Robert Nadelson wrote that. And it is a really heavy book. I can honestly say I've probably not gotten through the whole thing. He's a very educated professor, lawyer. I mean, it's above my head. But if you want more information, those are some good books. So now I think we'll just jump into questions. We have representatives here. Representative Dwayne Qualm and Representative Cal Barr.
Why don't you guys come on up so everybody can see who you are, and we can maybe say a few words to the group. How about that? And then we'll certainly get to all the questions that you may have. Hopefully I didn't confuse anybody, but if I did, I'll unconfuse them.
I don't see any other...
Yeah, did we miss another representative, or is it just you two guys? I didn't see any others, but... Okay. So, why don't we do this? Just introduce yourself and, what makes you want to be here this evening.
We should go alphabetically.
Oh, well, okay. All right.
I think the last time we did this, Dwayne went first, or did I? So we'll get this done. So my name's Cal Barr, state representative. My district number is 31B. I'm on the north side of Anoka counties, Ham Lake, East Bethel, Linwood, that neck of the woods up there. I will go anywhere to promote the Convention of States idea. The federal government has gotten so far out of control, they have no idea. They don't even, I was talking to some caucus mates just a couple days ago with the passage of the BBB, Build It Back Better bill, or talking about that stuff, the big infrastructure bill. If you really want to have some fun and get your mind blown, go to Google James Madison veto bonus bill, 1817. It was the last act that James Madison did as President of the United States. The bonus bill was what we would today call an infrastructure bill, canals, roads, bridges, those kinds of things, is what was in that bonus bill. So James Madison is one of the 37 guys who actually signed the Constitution at the Philadelphia Convention. He said it was illegal, it was unconstitutional to have the federal government do internal improvements inside states. That's a state function and not a federal government function. And we just passed a $1.3 trillion spending bill that they all think is just hunky-dory fine. That's something Dwayne and I are supposed to be voting on, not somebody in Washington. So that's just an example. The thing about the debt, the debt is numbers that we cannot comprehend. Nobody can really get a grasp around $30 trillion. You can kind of get an idea of $1 million or a few $1 million, what it can actually do in your daily life, how it would affect you. It's just too astronomical a number of the 30 trillion. So start knocking zeros off and get it down to something that you can relate to. We've crossed 30 trillion. Knock the zeros down. That's the same thing as you having a $300,000 adjustable rate mortgage and your income is less than $50,000 a year. How are we ever going to pay that off plus pay for all the things we do? That's why I'm involved in Convention of the States and anything else that will get an Article 5 Amendment Convention called so that Dwayne and I can actually represent you. You know who we are. You know where to find us. You can come to our door because we're there. You can stand out front and still go home at night. You can't do that when they're in Washington. They're out of touch. They only talk to you when they have to. Some of them are better than others. But you're not going to have a daily conversation. You're not going to call up your U.S. rep and say, yeah, they take your call. You call Dwayne, you call me, we'll get back to you. That's kind of what we do. We represent you, the people. We represent approximately 40,000 people, not 700,000. It's just too big, too out of control, and it can't respond to the needs of the citizens. So with that, I will let Dwayne.
People forget why this nation was founded. People forget what the people did that created this nation. The people felt the power was with the people. They felt each individual state has differences and they need autonomy and sovereignty. But they came together realizing there needed to be a federal government for protection of the nation and some other aspects. So they got together and they decided what they would give the federal government in power. But the power and nation came from the states. It was birthed by the states, and the states have the actual power. People need to remember that. People keep thinking, oh, I'm in my day, I'm doing my stuff. But every now and then, there comes a time when we step forward to do something greater than just our neighborhood. Something for the future and posterity. And we seem to have forgotten what the hundreds of millions of people that would love to come to the United States know, is that this is the best country. This is a place where you can make what you want to make out of your life. You have that freedom, that capability. Government does not dictate and control. Too many people have forgotten that. Most of them are, in a District of Columbia, not a state. And there was a reason why it wasn't a state. Because they knew that if you didn't keep that separate and less than what a state is, that the power would just grow there. One good thing out of the pandemic has been that many people have had their eyes open to what is going on. And you've seen that where whole school boards are being recalled, that the class of leadership whatever group it is, that think we know better than you, have forgotten that the leaders you elect are your servants. The leaders you elect need to listen to you and follow your will. Your voice is getting stronger. It's being heard, and it's confusing them. Frankly, if you look at some of the things DC has spoken about, they think we maybe don't know how to count or add. They think that we will believe it when they say, we spend another $3 or $4 trillion, that will take care of inflation. The common sense is lost. But the only good thing is that we're boiling the pot a little too quick, and we woke up. A few centuries ago, citizens of this country woke up, made a difference. You hear the naysayers' fear of what will happen in this convention. I say that if we don't have 13 chambers across this country, one chamber in each of 13 states that says no to something bad, we're farther gone than I think. But it's not too late. And these meetings is where you become informed, empowered, and you have conversations with others. You arm yourself with the truth. You arm yourself what is important. And you go out, and the people you interact with open their eyes. Remind them that they have the strength, the power, and they have the control if they just take it and step forward and work hard. So I think it's past time that we take questions, and I'll hand this off. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so questions. Who has something to clarify or just want to ask of the representatives where they're at or what they think? Please. I think you had your hand up back there, but we'll see if we can get both mics to work and everybody can hear everything.
So with regards to the resolution, once it's passed, how long does it stand? Is there an expiration?
So most states do not have a sunset clause in the resolution, so it stays on the books. And I believe that's true for the one here. Yes? I just want to make sure these guys know. But so some states have put sunset clauses in, or few, not some, just a few, but most do not. So it stays until they say no more.
Some states have, meaning some that have already passed it, or just other states?
Just in the ones that have been introduced, it's
Okay.
there's a smattering of it. It's not a majority by far.
Okay.
It's just a few.
And is there a goal date for getting the 38?
About 10 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
How about that?
Okay.
I mean, as fast as we possibly can, really.
It's 32. You need 34.
34 to
34?
34 to call, so 38 to ratify.
That's
Yeah.
my goal.
Yeah. 34 is definitely the goal, and we're here to do that as fast as we can. It's a slower process than I think everyone wants at this point, but it's the one that's constitutional, as opposed to some revolution version. Yeah.
Hi. In one of the slides, it had a map of the United States, and it said that there were blue states, green states, and I think
Yellow
there
or
was a
something. Yeah.
The numbers of states, did they all have something?
Yeah.
put
So.
out? So there was like 15, 8, and I think 16.
Yeah. So the 15 are the ones that have passed.
Right.
Then there's ones that have passed in one of the chambers. And then there's others where there's been action. It's been introduced, but it hasn't been heard yet, things like that. So those are the three
Okay.
different versions.
So there's basically 15 and 8 that have it in process or
Yeah,
already
passed or in
finished.
process
Passed or
for
in
sure, yep,
process, And
yep.
then 16 more that they've
They've been introduced, but haven't
considering.
really gotten
Okay.
very far yet.
All right.
Is that fair? Yep. Okay, great. Awesome. So it's, there's action, it's just not gotten over the threshold yet.
I have a question. I'm wondering where he's from, the last representative.
Dodge and Olmsted County.
Okay. So do we have anybody in our county area that is on board with this, that didn't show up today? Anybody know the answer to that?
Great question. Who's the rep?
I know the answer.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Thanks, Kathy.
Because I called all of ours. Representative Lippert, I spoke with his LA, and he said that he would be interested, but he wasn't sure if he had availability, and otherwise he'd be more than willing to set up a meeting with me to talk about it. Then Representative Brian Farr called. He said, it's Veterans Day and I have 3 events to go to. So he wasn't able to. And Senator Draheim, I had an email from him saying he would be here. So
And do we know if they're on board, are any of them on board with
I have,
Lippert? I'm gonna guess no.
no.
Throwing that out there.
Senator Draheim is, I have spoken with him in the past. He's very much for the balanced budget amendment, but he said he does support us. So, and Brian Farr, Representative Farr, is a co-sponsor of our current resolution. So when I spoke with him, he said, I'm still not sure how everything will work, but he said, I'm for it, but, he's just a little questioning things yet, so.
Questioning is good, right? Question,
Yes.
pretty much, I was told that question everything, right? That's good. Nothing wrong with that. Do your research. Find out, please. And I invite people, find as much as you possibly can. Yes, yes. If a politician says something, don't take it, ever. Question everything. All right, was another question? Way in the back. Kathy, get your running shoes on. Such a polite group. Nice.
So I've got 2 questions.
Great.
First one is, in the state of Minnesota, you said it's in process. Where in process is it, and how far has it moved? And what is the future schedule of it?
Okay. So I know it's been introduced into the House and the Senate, but these guys can tell you more where they are than I can. So,
We've introduced it a few different terms, and every 2 years you have to reintroduce. There was a bit of a diversion with the constitutional amendment crowd, but Mr. Meckler, in conversations, he's basically brought up the good point that if we come close on a constitutional balanced budget amendment, that Congress would take over and do something, and amazingly it wouldn't work, and see, that's why we shouldn't have a balanced budget constitutional amendment. That's the most popular one. The other one that's a little trickier is understanding state sovereignty and reestablishing the power of the states. And that is probably the more important one to halt the congregation of power centralized at the federal government. So the difference is we've got the 3. We need the 3.
Maybe was your question was where is it in the process, right? So they're introduced. The Democrats have not allowed for a committee hearing in either chamber. Well, I think the Senate has probably had one, but it's not going to get out of there. It's not going to get out of there unless we pass it in the House. So it's kind of it's there, but it's not been passed or it's not been heard in the House. That's a little more specific, right?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. My question is, you spend a lot of time talking about the regulations and reining in the federal government. So I'm a licensed firearms dealer. I know all about the regulation.
Yeah.
What specific amendments are you looking at to actually accomplish that? Following the convention, and you points.
Yes, that's right.
If you have some specific amendments in mind, and what would they kind of look like? Especially when it comes to regulatory agencies.
Yeah, there are not specific things proposed right now. That's what the convention is for. So we're not saying we want this amendment to pass, right? We want to talk about reining in the federal government. There's a lot of smart people that can get in a room and talk about what's the best way to do that. That's what the convention is for. So we're not proposing specific ones yet, because there might be great ideas we hadn't thought of, right? So that's why we want to bring people in a room and talk about it. So that's one of the reasons why they aren't specific, but it also, that's not how the process actually works. We have to get the convention called, here's the areas we want to talk about, then we can talk about it. So that's just how it works. Yeah, Summer, go ahead.
So just to kind of dovetail on that and answer your question a little bit. So if you read Mark Levin's book, The Liberty Amendments, really, really good book. And in there, he's got 10 examples of amendments that could come out of a convention like this. So to your point, as far as federal regulations, he proposed one that said something along the lines of, if the federal government comes out with a law out of Congress or a regulation out of the federal bureaucracies, the states, if 3/4 of them got together and said, we don't like it, it's gone. So the states could overrule a federal bureaucracy rule, regulation, or even a law that comes out of Congress. And that law and that nullification of that would not be subject to the Supreme Court, which would be critical, right? But that's not necessarily what would come out of the convention, but that's a type of amendment that you could picture coming out of it that would address that one of those three areas of limiting the size and scope of the federal government. It's called the Liberty Amendments. It's by Mark Levin.
It's one of the books Kathy showed us.
Also, we did have a simulated convention in 2016 that has been videoed and is on the Convention of States website. You can watch the whole thing and see how it works, what they came out with and everything.
Example amendments.
Yeah, not the ones, but ones that could happen. Okay, any other questions? Anything else we can help clarify for you so you feel informed enough to share the word of what we're doing?
They also have petitions.
That was my next thing. Very good, Nina. Very good.
Anybody would like to sign a petition?
So yeah, petitions. Go ahead. If you want to sign a petition, raise your hand, and come around. We'll get you a petition. You can sign it, and we can answer a few more questions while we're doing that too. Yeah.
On this map,
Yeah.
it says that 76% of Minnesota would
Be in favor. Yeah.
in favor of it.
Yeah.
Where was that polling done, and why isn't that enough for our representatives to get their heads out of this?
That's a great second part. I love that second part. As far as where it was done, that was from the national office, so I can't speak to where they took the poll and where they went to. Amy, Okay.
The Trafalgar Group, they're very well, they're very reputable. I'm a statistician, and I really dug into the polls because you need to believe what's in front of you.
I don't believe many of them, but
I
that's one that I do. tend to
Trafalgar,
believe.
yes. And it's interesting, you will see more of those polls. I talk really loud too. But you're going to see more of those polls coming out from Convention of States. Hold it close. Okay. So if anybody has any more specific questions about that, the sample space was very large. It was specifically geared towards the different parties, and it is rock solid. And it's one of the biggest pieces when I talk to legislators. They don't necessarily believe me, but it's true.
Oh, I just have one more question.
Okay.
Since we have the Democrats in the House, it's never going to go through, right?
Probably not.
We're never going to get to the next step because it's going to just be stuck there, and then we have loser Walz as our governor. So does he play any part of that or not?
He does not. The governor has no
House
say in
and
it.
the Senate.
Yeah.
So it's still going to be stuck in the House unless that changes.
So two things I just want to say.
Get voter fraud taken care of, we're screwed all around, all the time.
So we have a lot of issues going on. So you put your finger on many, right? No, that's fine. Election integrity is a big deal.
Yeah.
That is a big deal. It's not something that's part of what we're trying to get accomplished here, but it is part of the bigger picture. And so I would just say, be involved. Go be a election judge, right? Yeah. Go help count. Go be there to be watching. Put some pressure there. That needs to happen, and we need to, really get involved with the whole election integrity from a state level also. The other thing is we need to elect more people that think about along the lines of what we're doing. So my representative is Melissa Hortman. So I've gotten no headway with her. I rarely even hear back from her at this point. So there is a block there now. So all it means is we got to get involved. We need to do more. We need to do a lot more with just be part of the election process and being active. Be activists. And that just means being involved is really all it means. That word activist has been thrown around in a kind of a negative way. I think just be involved, school board, election judge, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to help a lot of it. Okay.
We're in a group that meets, second or Thursday. Yeah, it's usually this Thursday. In Faribault at the Village Theater. Yeah.
Okay.
Friends of Liberty, we're on Facebook, so we are involved.
Great.
Friends of Liberty, yeah, sorry, thank you. Yeah, we're involved in school.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, we'll just keep doing it, and let's get more people doing the same, right? Spread the word and help other people start their own groups.
On the election integrity part, a lot of the fraud comes from a few districts and area of where that's why the Electoral College federally prevents fraud in a couple states affecting. Because California could miraculously have enough votes to elect the president with a couple other states. So the Electoral College protects. What helps in this process, the governor has no say. The individual representatives, and we have frequently had the chambers change majority, and I would guess that this next cycle, the people that would support this type of amendment and process will probably win the majority. But don't take anything for granted.
That's
The people in the state who support it, if we have 76%, right? If that's what the polling saying.
Yeah.
So the people want it.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have to listen.
Yeah, we got.
Instead, they work for us, but they don't. They don't work for us because they don't listen. They don't really care a lot of them. And that's the
Some do, not enough. Not enough yet. Part of it is knowing maybe who supports Convention of States, following up on that. On the Convention of States site, you can find that out. Yes, they do. Often.
Not all. I agree with some and not
Yeah.
others. Ron Paul was in D.C. for decades. He never assimilated. He stood by his principles. There are people, and it's easier in the state because you live in your district, the grocery store, the gas station. You interact with the people. But spread the word. Get involved in the process and create that buzz. But, I know what you're saying statewide, it's tougher, but this is just the chambers, not the executive branch, which some of us have issues with.
Yeah, go ahead.
So don't tell me off what he said. You said you got 76% in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Why don't we have a ballot measure and just bypass? Well, we got to get it on the ballot.
Yeah, that's from people, not from the elected officials. So part of the reason is elected officials tend to get reports from aides on what's the deal with the Convention of States. And okay, I'll let Cal jump on this.
So, if you had a ballot initiative, That would be changing our state constitution. To change the federal constitution, there's only two processes. And this is what we're talking about tonight is we pass a resolution that the states, representatives from the state of Minnesota would get together with other state representatives and draft the language to be sent around and ratified. The other one is what we're all familiar with, where the U.S. House and Senate draft the language and then send it around for everybody. But when you say put it on our ballot, that would be to change our state constitution?
No, I meant the commission states itself, to pass the actual.
But it has to be passed through the legislature, and a ballot initiative in Minnesota still has to go through the legislature to get on the ballot.
Yes, sir.
So I'm from Lakeville. How do I find out what kind of constitution, conventions, action is going on in Lakeville? Groups or whatever.
Amy, what do you have?
I can, if you share your information with me, I'll get you completely hooked up. Any of you, I can get you hooked up into our system. You'll know who the supporters are in your neighborhood. You'll know what your representative and your senator's position is, and we can tell you what to do. We can give you action items.
So Amy's one of our state co-directors, so she's the answer person. Basically.
We
So-
can take anything. We have people that make phone calls to help bring you folks here, and that's their skill. We have people such as Sumner in the back that was speaking about the Liberty Amendments. He is a legislative liaison. So he goes and talks with these gentlemen, and so he knows, and he has those particular skills. We have IT people where is Mr. Gary? Yes, this is Gary. He is our state information analyst. So we need PR people, we need marketing people, we need accountings, we need everybody. And I can give every single one of you something to make a difference.
Well said.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Amy. Very, very good.
What is it that your Democratic cohorts don't like about COS? Because I don't view it as red, blue, Republican, Democrat. I view it more as a common sense issue. So what is it, when you're talking to your colleagues, what is it that they object to?
Yeah, so in case you didn't hear, just
Just waiting to answer that one.
the ones that object to a convention of states, what are they telling you guys?
Yeah. Lay it all out.
Most of my Democratic colleagues don't like it because it's a devolving of power instead of a consolidation of power. Most of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle believe everything should be run out of Washington, not at a state. They view states more like provinces as opposed to sovereign states that are part of a union of nation states, which is what we are. Dwayne might remember this. We had a conversation at the beginning of the year about the resolution and the January 6th stuff, and we had a big debate on the floor about our form of government. Every one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle says we're in a democracy. Every one of the colleagues on my side of the aisle said we're in a constitutional republic. And when we tried to get the language changed so that it said constitutional republic instead of a democracy, it was a pretty good floor debate. It was pretty healthy. And it was very partisan on the vote. Now, nobody crossed the line on that. So does that kind of answer your question a little bit? They don't even know what kind of government they are, so why would they want to devolve it down to, like township and city level?
Yeah.
You good?
They drink a different Kool-Aid than we do. So.
Okay, that's fair. All right, anything else? Yeah.
I have two things.
Okay.
First of all, to the integrity of elections, when I was at the state fair this summer, and I was stopped by the Republican booth, they said as far as the election judges, I got my card, I got my information so I can sign up. Last election, Democrats had 20-some thousand election judges, and the Republicans had 2,000 or 3,000. 3,000. That's the difference. Yep. So you need to sign up to be a judge.
And there's already called, so you can't even sign up right now. You have to wait till it's time. Is it April or May, right?
Yes, I was gonna say, there's, There is time, there's a specific time to do so, and I heard somebody, it might have been you, Cal, that said about if you are a person that is supposed to be a judge, and they tell you it's time to go home, stay. Sit on the floor. Do not leave until the job is done. You will have to, it will be difficult, but you can do it. Hold them accountable.
Well, we have a problem in Rice County because Denise Anderson and her staff have taken it upon themselves to deputize her staff and not use actual judges and not the volunteers. So Denise Anderson has deputized her staff in Rice County.
Last 10 years.
Yes, and they're counting all the military ballots and all the mail-in ballots, which is not legal. It's supposed to be election judges. And that was passed by our, what are they called? No, it wasn't passed by the legislators, the county commissioners.
Oh, yeah.
They passed it, which is illegal. Your legislatures have to pass that. They can't change the rules. They changed the rules illegally. So our mail-in ballots and military ballots are being counted illegally in Rice County by Denise Anderson and her staff. So we, at our group, have been contacting our county commissioners saying, and they're clueless. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Da 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 da. So you gotta contact these people because all this, like they're saying about these, the reason we're here tonight, I get we're off topic, but we have to start at our local level. We're not gonna change what's going on in Washington, but you can change what's going on in your community. Because you have to hold our local people is where this deception starts, and then it just branches out to DC, right? So they're, like you said, they have how many judges? We have 3,000. They have just infiltrated every aspect of everything, right? We need to take the power back. Time to take the power back, folks. Get involved.
Have you contacted the MVA?
That's right where I was going. Minnesota Voter Alliance has, go ahead.
Well, I and several others are plaintiffs in lawsuits on that.
Great, we know.
But talk with them and they will help and assist. They targeted a few counties that were part of our population. But have them come and speak to your group. December 9th, there's a event in Rochester where they're updating on a most recent court. They've got another, you move up until, and hopefully it gets up high enough. They have actually won a case before the U.S. Supreme Court some years ago. So they've got some pretty good firepower.
I know one of the gals from this area has talked.
Yeah, we had an election judge. She did a sworn affidavit. She didn't know who she waited too long to go to the right officials. She went through the proper channels, instead of probably going right to law enforcement. But we did have some information go before a judge on Friday. I haven't heard how that's come out yet, but so it may be moving up.
Well, thanks for the effort. That's being involved.
Yeah.
That's a really clear example right there. Everybody can step in, do something. Yeah, you had a second thing.
So my second question
Yeah.
is, okay, so this is all fine and dandy and wonderful, but it's going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
With all the things that are being done that are unconstitutional right now, what do we do right now to stop this?
We stop it.
Yeah.
Well, say no, don't comply.
You do what they're doing in Faribault. You come together, you talk, you discuss, you share information. And that grows. You find out about statewide and national organizations, and that helps. But you get up and you get active, and you follow the path.
You just get
So
up and you
we
get
have
involved.
a group that meets on Tuesdays. I'll let you say because first time this Tuesday, so.
So we meet in Northfield, and we have a group that is meeting and kind of conquering and dividing topics. And right now, we've been going to the school board meetings to get the mask mandate lifted, to get them to give us input on when they're going to do it, and guiding them to what we want to hear back from them and when to take work. Just getting involved. We're inviting next Tuesday, we're inviting some firemen in to just be present as we have our conversation, and hopefully we'll start connecting the dots and reaching in to help the Northfield Hospital staff, which have just been released in the lawsuit that's going on. Just trying to keep it local and do as best as we can with our folks.
What's your group? Where are you meeting?
I don't think we're truly meeting for our group yet, but we're going to be for the So it's Tuesday, we'll be meeting at the bowling alley.
So I was just gonna say,
We used to be weekly too.
the BPOU for LeSueur County, we meet the first Monday of every month, and there are people on our BPOU that are also working in election integrity. So I think this is statewide, and the newly elected GOP representative is like kind of changing things around a little bit, and they are deciding, I'm not sure how to put this. He has his ideas on doing just a statewide, official statewide election integrity group. So there was discussion about these little integrity groups that are around the counties, and it's kind of the consensus that they aren't sure that all that 10 months of hard work they've been putting in is going to come to anything. So it's politics at its best right now. But getting involved in your local BPOU, as far as being an election judge, if you're gonna fill out the paperwork, make very sure you're using your legal name, your proper address, because Steve Simon is looking for anything that he could throw them out. That's why we ended up...
Or not now?
No.
Not, yeah, that's right.
But that's why we only had 3,000, was because he combed through them.
How can we, go ahead, Susan.
That application is unfinished by November 1 year prior.
Oh, to be an election
Yeah.
judge, you mean? I don't know the exact.
Caucus times.
They're supposed to, when you caucus, you can sign up for an election judge. And Steve Simon, who's the Secretary of State, from what I've heard, wants everybody to send the applications to him. I wonder why.
So I guess Cal reminded me of a great term that I haven't heard in a while, and I used to it when I was a kid, and that is civil disobedience.
Yep.
And I think a resurgence of that is a really good idea. So what you guys are displaying is that. So good on you. Thank you. Keep going. Don't lose heart. Keep moving and invite others to do the same, please.
State statute says, the way it goes, that you need to have a balance between the major parties.
Yep.
They get that list and identification because each of the parties collects and goes up to the state party, and they submit the list to Simon. That way your state party knows the numbers on the list and knows the people. And when these counties say we don't have enough, so we're appointing deputy auditors to do that job. You have an organization that knows exactly how many you have, and in Olmsted, we're able to force them to add some of the people that were on that list this last, the year ago, not the past one. But you've got to use the process set up by law. We follow the law and rules. The other people sort of think they can ignore what doesn't work for them. But there is the process, and if we've got that, and we've got documentation and proof, that helps when we go to the courts and say, they didn't use our people, And here's a list. There were sufficient people. They're not following state statute.
Okay, well, with that, if you have other questions, we can stick around for a little bit. You know, if you want to do it more privately, great. Is there anybody else that would like to sign a petition that hasn't yet? Get that, and we have them at the tables in the back. Please take some literature if you want to take some to other people to help you spread the word. We've got them for you there too. Thank you very much for coming. Again, thanks, veterans, for all you've done for us, and let's save our country. Thank you. We also have some yard signs if you'd like to buy a yard sign. Or Kathy's got them over there. They're only $10, so you can let people know about it just by having it in your yard. Thanks again, guys. Take care. Thanks, sir. Always a pleasure to have you around.